Welcome to the Fibromyalgia Podcast. I'm Tami Stackelhouse, fibromyalgia coach, author, and founder of the International Fibromyalgia Coaching Institute. The goal of this podcast is to empower you with access to the dream team of experts and coaches I've discovered are key to living the fibro life you love. From the comfort of your own home, and maybe even your pajamas, I'll help you take back control of your life and health. To help out with fibro fog, I always include full show notes and additional resources at fibromyalgiapodcast.com. Welcome to the Fibromyalgia Podcast. I'm your coach, Tami Stackelhouse, and this is episode 120. Today's episode is our next Ask the Coach or Dear Tami episode, where I answer questions sent in by you, the listener. Now, if you haven't sent in a question for our Ask the Coach series, I would love for you to do that. I love getting good questions. They either turn into Ask the Coach episodes, or I use those questions to help me decide what topics to bring up on the podcast. In today's Ask the Coach, I'm sharing a question that came up during one of my Ask Me Anything sessions during our annual alumni retreat back in September. It was such a good question that I wanted all of you to hear it. I've also done a lot of thinking since Angela first asked the question, and so I wanted her to hear my deeper answer since I gave her what I had off the top of my head, but a few new things have come to me. Are you ready to hear the question? Here it is. How do you do it all? Now, I don't mean how do you do it all? Angela is asking how I, Tami, do it all. And I got to say, I was really proud of her for asking that question because, it's one of those questions that isn't necessarily practical, but something everybody, I'm sure, was wondering. So good for her for saying it out loud. And I want to dive into that a little bit. So first of all, I want to just kind of set the stage a bit. Remember that I'm not where you are. So if you are looking at me and you are comparing your life to what you see of my life, remember two things. Number one, you're comparing your real life to my highlight reel, right? I'm not always showing you everything behind the scenes. I try to do that as much as I can, but let's face it, I am not doing the podcast on video on the days where I'm sitting around my living room in my pajamas. And that happens sometimes. That was last weekend, as a matter of fact. So know that you are comparing your everyday life to my highlight reel, as they say. The second thing I want you to keep in mind is that my fibromyalgia has been in remission for years. Literally, the last time I remember feeling any fibro pain was New Year's Eve 2018. So it's been a long time since I've had any fibro pain. So if you are comparing your normal fibro life when your fibro is not in remission to me, where my fibro has been in remission for years, obviously that's two very different things. So I just want to remind you of that what you see of me isn't necessarily all of reality. Not that I'm lying to you, but just you don't see every moment of every day. And number two, my fibromyalgia has been in remission for years. So having reminded you of that, I just want to answer Angela's question. How do you do it all? And the very simple answer is, I don't. I know that's not a very helpful answer, so trust me, I will go in deeper to that, but I don't do it all. I also want you to recognize the language that I use there. I don't do it all. I choose not to try to do it all. That is different than saying I can't do it all. It's true, I can't. Nobody can, right? I don't care how healthy you are, you still only have 24 hours in a day, 7 days in a week, 365 days in a year, except that bonus one on leap year, right? So we all cannot do everything. That means we've got to make choices. And one of the things that I have gotten really, really good at is choosing the things that I want to do and choosing those things that are going to move me forward, which was my first answer to Angela, that I'm really good at choosing the things that are going to move me forward. What do I mean by that? And how does that apply to you? The main thing is we do have to choose, right? Whether you have fibromyalgia or not, you can't do everything. So you want to do the things that are most important to you, the things that are going to move your life in the direction you want to go. So let me give you some examples of what that might look like. For me, when I was really, really sick with my fibromyalgia, one of the things I realized was that I could really only leave the house once a day and continue to improve and continue to feel better. Knowing that, how do I choose what that one thing is going to be? Well, sometimes that one thing is something like going to the doctor. Clearly, that is moving me forward into getting better, feeling better, all of that. Sometimes that one thing might be seeing family. Sometimes it might be going to church or a small group. All of those things purposefully chosen to move me forward, move my health forward into better health, move me emotionally forward. Sometimes it was education, so mentally moving me forward, helping me learn more, and really just move more towards that life that I want to live. Now, sometimes when I would choose those one thing to do during the week, some of what I would choose would be to stay at home, right? So often we have this thought in our heads that we're choosing between a thing and nothing. We are never choosing between a thing and nothing. We're choosing between two things. And one thing might be to go out and the other thing might be to stay at home and rest. So when you think about what it is that you're choosing or saying no to something, remember that when you say no and you stay home, you are saying yes to healing. You're saying yes to feeling better. You're saying yes to giving your body rest so that it can actually start to heal. Now, I talk a lot about saying no to say yes in the episode that is actually titled that, Say No to Say Yes. And that is episode number 12. So that is going to go way back. We're on 120 right now. We're going to go way back to episode 12. And you can listen to me talk a lot more about saying no to say yes. One of the things I've been so grateful to have learned as a kid, one of the things my dad used to always say is that it's never hard choosing between right and wrong. Most people don't have a problem with that. What's hard is choosing between good and best, right? So it's not right and wrong. It's right and righter, better, best, right? So you could choose between two good things. And that's where it gets really hard, right? Do I go to this thing that I really want to do, or do I stay home and let my body rest? And there's got to be balance in that answer, right? Because maybe what's good for your body is to stay home and rest, but maybe what's good for your heart and your soul and your mind is to go to the thing, right? We've got to remember that in order to live our lives, living our lives and having that joy, having that purpose, like that is why you want to have a life you can live, right? Is so you can go and do those things. If we cut out all of those things that make life worth living, it's really hard to do things like go to bed on time. Because what's the point, right? It's really hard to do things like say no and not overdo it and eat the right things and take all your meds and your supplements and, go to physical therapy again, all the things, right? It is impossible to do that stuff if there's not a good reason for it, right? We're doing those things so that we can live the life we want to live. And so we absolutely have got to find ways to add joy into our lives, which of course leads me to another podcast episode. How to add more joy into your life, which is another one of those really, really early podcasts episode. And that is episode number 13. So you can go and listen to episode 13, where I talk about how to add more joy into your life and literally walk you through an exercise that will help you do exactly that. So you can't do everything at once, right? You can't do everything, period, but you also can't do everything all at the same time. So as you're thinking about how do you do it all, as you look at my life, I didn't add everything all at the same time, right? I didn't work on my sleep and my diet and exercise and adding all the supplements and building a business. And, I didn't do everything all at the same time. They were building blocks where I would work on one piece, get that piece pretty solid, and then move on to the next thing. Those of you who know anything about habit building, about changing habits, this is one of the cardinal rules. You don't add too many things in at the same time because you just can't be good at everything all at once. So you work on one thing, get it to the point where it becomes a habit. You don't have to think about it. You're doing well at it. It's just part of who you are now. And then you can add in another thing. So if you're looking at your life and thinking, oh my gosh, you don't understand, it's a hot mess. There is way too many things to work on. I can't not work on it all. Still, I want you to take a deep breath, and realize you cannot do it all, no matter who you are. This is not a fibro thing. It's not a, mom working thing. It's just life. You can't do it all. So choose one thing. And there are lots of ways that you could choose, and I'm not going to go into that, but just choose one thing. It could be the thing that just jumps out at you the most. It could be the thing that you feel is going to make the biggest difference, but pick one thing, work on that, get it really solid, then add in the next thing. I will say that the biggest thing that I would suggest working on is your sleep. I know. That's a tricky proposition. And you're probably thinking, but I have been trying to work on my sleep. Get some help. Get some experts, whether that's a coach, a sleep physician. Like your primary care probably doesn't know everything in order to fix fibro sleep. Get a sleep study, read up on it. Like there's a lot of information out there. We can help, but sleep is a great place to start because if you're not sleeping well, everything else is hard. Okay. So knowing you can't work on everything all at once and picking one thing, adding to it little bit by little bit, you might also discover that not everything is really your battle to fight. This was another thing I was really glad to learn early on in my life. I remember I was really, really active in my church at the time. And it was one of those things where, yes, there are starving children in Africa, but I was not put on this earth to help starving children in Africa. There are people who are here to do that, and that is awesome, but that's not my job. My job, I'm pleased to say, is here for you. I am here to encourage hope. That is what I exist for. To encourage hope in you, in all the fibro people who are lost, confused, frustrated, feeling hopeless. There is a better way. You can have a better life. That's what I'm here for. And if I were to go help starving children in Africa, I wouldn't be able to do this. I wouldn't be able to help you. So again, they're two good things, right? We're not choosing between good and bad. But in this situation, am I choosing between fulfilling my purpose, what I'm really here for, or just doing some other good thing? So I would encourage you to dig deep, work with someone, do a lot of journaling, and really think about what are you here for? Are you here to help other people? Are you here to bring new ideas out? Are you here to educate others? Are you a caregiver, a teacher? Do you build things, right? Like my husband, oh my goodness, as an engineer, like that is clearly his gift. Just the way his brain works is so great for that particular kind of thing. And when you try to do things that are against what you were made for, it is so much harder. Oh my gosh, it is so much harder. There are so many things that I am capable of, but that doesn't mean that they are easy or in my zone of genius. So that is another thing. When I'm asked, how do you do it all? And I say, I don't. Part of what I mean by that is literally, I don't do everything. Somebody else is doing some of it. So there are some things I choose not to do, right? That's the first part that we talked about saying no so you can say yes. But some of it is also delegating out the things that maybe need to be done but aren't in your zone of genius. Now, I'm speaking here, of course, as a business owner, right? Because there's things that my business needs that aren't in my zone of genius. So when you see all the posts that go up all over social media every day, I did not actually post those. I wrote them, right? Don't get me wrong. It's not like somebody else is pretending to be me, but there are tasks there that are not literally done by me. So just in case you're curious, the process, I have an assistant, Yadira, who is amazing. Hello, Yadira. She will go through the podcast episode and pull out quotes and things that she thinks would be good. Then I choose the ones I actually want to use. Then she creates drafts of the posts. She makes drafts of the posts. I edit and approve those posts, and then she actually posts them. So that may sound like a lot of work, but realize that she's actually doing most of it there. I am absolutely the person who is making those posts in terms of writing it, and it's what I want to say to you, but I am not literally making that post. This podcast, obviously, I am sitting here recording this, right? Because I'm talking to you. Somebody else isn't pretending to be me. But there are a lot of bits of the podcast that I don't do. I make this recording and then I send it off to the magicians behind the scenes to make the rest happen without me. So I have people who edit the podcast, right? Hi, Alex. Hi, Brittany. I have people who post the show notes. I have people who edit the video. Hi, Regina. So all of these things happen literally without me. That is part of how I do it all, is that I have other people to help do it all. So that's speaking from a business perspective. What about your personal life? Right? Obviously, you have to feed yourself. You have to bathe yourself. Like there are some things you have to go to the bathroom yourself. There are things people can't do for you. But there are things that you don't personally have to do. I no longer do yard work. I have hired somebody to come in and do that. I don't clean my house. I've hired somebody to come in and do that for me. I don't do my own grocery shopping. Yes, I pick out the items that I want, but somebody else actually picks them out at the store and puts them in bags for me and delivers them to my house, right? There are a lot of things like that that I choose not to do because there is only so many minutes in a day and so much energy in this body. And there are other things that I want to spend my time on. So when you see me doing all of these things, podcast episodes, teaching classes, working with clients, speaking on summits, all of those things that I do, know that I am not grocery shopping, cleaning the house, mowing the lawn, right? Now, obviously, if I've hired so many people to do all of these things, that means that we have the resources to do it. So, obviously, again, take that with a grain of salt, but that is part of why I work, right? My husband pays the bills, right? He pays for some of that, but also the money that I earn in my business helps me to keep doing that, right? So hiring the people to do the podcast means that I can then do more, right? So I reinvest that money that I earn into time so that I have more time to do more things and make more money, and then reinvest that again for more time. Now, if you can't do that, right, you might be someone who doesn't have the resources that I have. If you do have the resources that I have, go spend the money. It is worth it to spend the money to get more time. Now, if you don't have those resources, obviously easier said than done, right? But there are ways that you can do those kinds of things. Like you can take the ideas. For instance, there are a lot of grocery stores where you can order your groceries online. Somebody will bag it up for you. You pull into the parking lot, they put it in your car, and you drive home. And it doesn't cost you anything. My friend Melissa, she does that at Walmart, I believe. Target does that. Safeway does that. Those are just the ones that I know of. I'm sure there's a ton more. But take advantage of things like that. You can also take advantage of your community, sharing with neighbors. Is there a teenager in your town that could mow your yard, right? Is there someone that you could trade with for something, right? Like maybe your neighbor mows the yard and maybe there's something you can do for them. Think about the ways that you can get rid of some of those tasks because really you cannot do it all. The other thing is we have to lower our expectations of what life needs to look like. I mean, let's be real here. We can't always have a perfect house with, a homegrown, home-cooked meal. Like there just isn't enough time or energy in the day to do all of that. So we need to relax a little bit. And instead of striving for perfection, we're not trying to be perfect. We're trying to get better. And in trying to get better, that means often doing less. So think about the ways that you can offload some of that stuff that you're doing that maybe doesn't actually need to be done. And the other thing, as I said earlier, think about the priority of things as well. What is most important to you in your life? Is it your business or your career? Is it your family? Is it serving others, giving back to your community? Is it finding a way to make the world a better place? Maybe it is those starving kids in Africa, right? So all of those things can be priorities, and there's no judgment there. There's no good or bad, anything else. Just make sure that you're choosing what is truly most important to you. And then go about the activities that are going to move you closer to that. And I say move you closer to that because it's not like you're going to say, you know what, this is my priority, and boom, it immediately happens in that moment and everything is perfect. Again, we can't go for perfect. Perfect isn't a real thing. Look out in nature. I was noticing the other day, there's a tree outside my house. And it's got like a big hole where like some branches should be. And I was thinking, as I look out here, nature looks so, quote, perfect. But when you dial in the details, you see a tree with a big hole in the branches. And this is why, if I were to draw that scene, I would have filled in that hole in the branches and my picture wouldn't have been as good. It's the imperfections in life that make it real, right? So think about what your priorities are, accept those priorities, and it's okay to let some of those other things go. It may be that right now your priority maybe even isn't yourself, right? Maybe you've got little kids, or maybe you've got a kid who's got health issues and you're focusing on your child. Maybe that's just how it has to be right now. Maybe you're taking care of aging parents, and that's just how it has to be right now. If that is your priority and you're doing that, moving towards your priority, awesome. Give yourself the grace and let it go. It is okay. You're doing what you are meant to be doing, and the rest just doesn't matter, right? But if you are doing those things, but in you, there is a different priority, that's okay too. Just make sure that you're moving towards that priority, or you're going to wither up. You're going to dry out into a husk and you're not going to be able to do any of it. So, do those juicy things, find your joy, and make those things more of a priority in your life. Now, I've talked a lot about things that you can do. And while it's easy to talk about this stuff, I do know it is much, much harder to actually do this stuff. It is hard to say no when you've been saying yes. It's hard emotionally, like all the thoughts in your own head, to be able to say no. It's also hard, like when you tell your family no and they're used to you saying yes, right? The expectations of other people make it difficult. This is not an easy thing. It is not easy to change how you think and not just go through the motions and do what you've always been doing, but actually stop and think, is this going to move me forward? And then when you say no to the things that aren't moving you forward, that's like its own kind of hard, right? So if you need help with this, please reach out. Reach out to us, to me, to one of my coaches. Reach out to a friend, your pastor, your spiritual advisor, your counselor, your therapist. There is nothing wrong with having support for these kinds of things. It is hard. I will tell you, I would not be where I am today without my coach, because she was the one that would keep reminding me, remember, you said you wanted this. Remember, you said this was your priority. Remember, you said this is where you wanted to go with your life. And then she would also help me figure out, okay, now how are we going to get there, right? She would role play with me. Like, how are you going to have that conversation with that person about why you can't do the thing? She would talk through with me the pros and cons of saying yes to this thing or saying yes to this other thing. What does that mean I can't do? Is that actually going to move me forward? I would not be here without my coach. And you may find that you need that support as well, and maybe you don't have it in your life. It is okay to go find it. It's okay to build that community yourself. And most importantly, it's okay to pay for it. There is nothing less about having support that you've paid for versus having support that you have not paid for. In fact, in many ways, when you hire somebody to support you, like me hiring my coach, you get an objective person that is on your side. Talking with my coach is very different than talking with my husband. Does my husband support me? Absolutely. But he's also a person. And he's also part of this family. And he also has dreams and wants and a direction he wants his life to go. And sometimes those things are in conflict with what I want. I mean, nobody, no matter how awesome your relationship is, everybody doesn't want everything the same all the time. I mean, that's what makes the world a beautiful place. Somebody's got to go feed the children in Africa while I'm here helping you, right? So we are not always going to match up. But when you hire somebody to be on your side, they are on your side. As professionals, right? Versus a friend who isn't trained, as professionals, we are trained to do that, to set our own thoughts, beliefs, desires aside and help you get what you want. So if you're thinking about doing that, finding somebody to help you, I would highly recommend that you do your research on the person that you're thinking of hiring, that you would learn about their particular profession and what they can help with. Obviously, a certified fibromyalgia coach is not a therapist or a counselor. We cannot provide mental health services, but I also can guarantee you we probably know more about fibromyalgia than a therapist generally would. So make sure that you are finding the person, the professional that fits with what you need. Maybe you don't need help with your fibromyalgia and you actually need help with the crazy relationships in your life. Find somebody who's a specialist at that, right? Maybe what you really need is a personal trainer to help make sure you do your exercise. Maybe you need a physical therapist to help you figure out how to move your body in better ways or more ergonomic ways. There are lots of different ways that you could go with this, but get help because it's hard. It is hard and you can't do it all, right? So as I leave you today with our Find a Coach, I just want to recap those main points for you. So when you think about how am I going to do it all, remind yourself you can't. Nobody can. Remember that you are comparing your real life to everybody else's highlight reel, right? If you're looking at social media and you're seeing all these people that are doing this, that, and whatever, you're seeing what they are choosing to show you. That doesn't necessarily mean you're seeing the whole picture. So keep that in mind. Also keep in mind that some of us, we've been working on this a long time, right? As a brand new runner, I would not compare myself with my brother-in-law who just ran a marathon, right? Don't compare yourself, your fibro life to my fibro life. It is a very different thing. Don't compare when you're just now starting to paint to Monet, right? So make sure that you are gaining inspiration from the people who are farther ahead of you on the path, but that you are not comparing yourself, finding your worth, how good, quote unquote, you're doing based on what you see in somebody else's life. That's not fair to you. Also, you can't work on everything all at once. So pick something, work on it until you've got that solved or is a pretty stable part of your life. Then go to the next thing, work on the next thing. Remember that not all worthy battles are yours to fight. You personally are not here on this planet to take care of every person and everything on this planet. You have your own special niche that you are here to fill, right? You have your own special magic that you're here to bring to the world, but you can't be everything to everybody. So pick your battles and see if you can't figure out what it is that you're here to do and stay focused on that. I'll be honest, that is why I've been able to accomplish so much, is because I have stayed focused. And remember, do those things that are going to move you forward, going to move you into the life that you want to live. Not all, quote, good things are good for you. This is something that actually just came up in our alumni association. We were talking about this mushrooms. There are a lot of mushrooms that are really good for your immune system, good for all kinds of things. But if you are somebody that is allergic to mold, it doesn't matter how, quote, good mushrooms are for you. They are not good for you. So remember that, right? Not everything is going to move you forward. So pick the things that are going to, whether that's moving you forward physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, moving you forward in your career. Just think about, like, in general, the life that you want to live. Is this thing going to get you closer, or is it going to make it take longer to get there? Remember, say no to say yes and add that joy back into your life. And for links to some of those podcast episodes, definitely go check out today's show notes page. It's fibromyalgiapodcast.com/120. And we'll have links to episode 12 and 13 in particular in there. But if I think of any other particular episodes that kind of fit with this, I will add those there as well. And remember, if you've got a question, please send it over. I love getting your questions. I'll either just answer it, send you an email back, or add it into a new topic, like our last episode on menopause. That was because I got a lot of Ask the Coach questions on menopause. So I love getting your questions. And as we wrap up, I want to leave you with this week's listener shout out. This is an email we received from Amy in New Zealand, and she said, "Your podcasts are a godsend and have definitely given me hope that I didn't have." Thank you so much, Amy. And I hope that, there's that word again, right? Hope. I hope that you are continuing to move forward into the life that you want to have. And don't be afraid to take a step back so you can move forward, because sometimes that's the way it is, right? Maybe you are driving along on your road of life and there's a big old rock in front of you. You're not going to get past that rock by just stepping on the gas. You're going to have to back up and go around, right? Sometimes that's life. Sometimes that's life with fibromyalgia. Sometimes we have to stop doing things for a little while so that we can rest and recover and then start doing them again. So remember, we're here if you need us. And if you are interested in checking out what it's like to work with a coach, check out any of our Stories of Hope episodes. Those are interviews with our graduates. They all worked with coaches as part of our Certified Fibromyalgia Advisor class. And then if you are interested in the class or interested in finding a coach yourself, we've got links for that in today's show notes page as well. fibromyalgiapodcast.com/120. See you here next time. And that wraps up another episode of the Fibromyalgia Podcast. I'm your coach, Tami Stackelhaus. For daily doses of hope, inspiration, and practical advice, come hang out with me on Facebook. Visit facebook.com/fibrocoach to find my personal coaching page and connect with me directly. To find the show notes, additional resources, or to schedule a consultation with me or one of my coaches, visit fibromyalgiapodcast.com.